Hi, I'm Namita Ramani, founder of Above Digital and your host for successful marketing for small businesses in Dubai. Welcome to yet another episode with me, and today I have an amazing small business owner. His name is Akshay Dosaj. Akshay is the managing director of Purple Honey Group that owns and operates 9 restaurants in UAE, including their in-house developed brands, namely Coriander, Biryani Pot, Zaitanya, Masala Nation, and now the newest addition that is Thamba. He studied corporate law at BPP Law School in London and worked as a senior associate at Norton Rose Fulbright for almost 9 years, after which he decided to join his wife at the Purple Honey Group, who is the founder and director of the group. Together with his wife, they got an Indian Innovator Award in 2016 by Entrepreneur magazine for the fastest growth in the nation. Let's hear his story on how this idea of opening up so many different restaurants came about and their vision for 2020 for their brands. Akshay, welcome and thank you so much for driving all the way from Abu Dhabi and taking time out from your busy schedule to come for this.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So, where in India are you from, Akshay?
My parents are North Indian. My mum's from Delhi, but I was born and raised in London. My dad was born in Kenya. So we're Indian origin, but we're kind of from all over the place. But Delhi is where I'd consider home in India.
Okay. Mostly I prefer going back in the past, the origins, as to how we were brought up, what did our parents study, what did we always wanted to become, because I believe that life takes you, you take up things in life based on your experiences. Most of the guests that I've interviewed so far have had experiences that have helped in making them the entrepreneur they've become or the kind of businesses that they're running. It's kind of always, in your case, actually in most of the other entrepreneurs' cases, their parents wanted them to become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And I was reading your bio while I was doing research on our podcast, was that you have studied economics and law from the beginning. You were always interested in law. Law was your passion, is it?
No. I was interested in business.
Okay.
And I thought law is a great foundation for business one day.
And your father?
He's a businessman in the UK.
Okay. Interesting. So you studied economics and law for the business.
Exactly.
Usually people do masters and MBAs and stuff. That's what I was just curious. It's a shame that your wife cannot join us. It would have been amazing if she was also part of the conversation. So why did you choose to drop law and join Purple Honey? Because business was the aim, I guess.
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to do business one day. I didn't know what and how. Yeah. The reason I picked corporate law over, say, criminal or any other area of law was because corporate is business law. And you touched upon doing an MBA. I looked at, do I go down an MBA route or do I go down a corporate law route? And I decided, for me, corporate law gives a skill set which most entrepreneurs don't have, whereas majority will have an MBA. And it also gave me a fallback. God forbid if business doesn't work, it's a security net for being able to provide for your family if you are not successful.
Yeah. So what do you look after now at Purple Honey? What are your key responsibilities?
So Shalini, as you mentioned earlier, she sort of founded the first restaurant back in 2010.
Which is Coriander.
Coriander, correct, in 2010. Okay. And I wasn't very involved in that at all. In fact, my involvement was just sharing a few ideas and a bit of opinion. Today, I'm involved in the full operations of the group, and Shalini's very much hands-off. Although we're joint managing directors, she'd be more of a kind of chairperson, whereas I'm much more hands-on in the operation, the day-to-day operations, all the decision-making, the signatures. But certain key decisions we'll always take together, and her input is still very much on the business. Her sort of DNA is still in the business and we run it with a joint vision, but she's not really on the day-to-day operations anymore.
Okay.
I kind of work for my wife.
Isn't that amazing? Very rarely do I hear.
I find it very easy having the same boss at home and at the office. It keeps life
Makes
very
life simple. Yeah. No power struggle, nothing. It is let you. That's a
Absolutely.
good, that's a very, what do you call, a good ingredient of a happy, successful marriage. Let the wife be the boss. What goes into creating a restaurant business? Like, how do you guys come up with these different brands for restaurant? If you could share your pains and struggles.
Well, look, we've kind of covered the whole spectrum. You know, we've got quick service with Biryani Pot. We've got casual dining with Coriander and the Zaitinias. We've got fine dining with Tamba. We've got a dark kitchen with Masala Nation. So, you know, we've got every spectrum of the restaurant, you know, cycle. Every restaurant has different challenges and a different thought process behind it. But all of them share one thing in common, which is we felt that there's a gap for a certain thing in the market. You know, now, is there a gap for an Indian quick service restaurant? No. Is there a gap for a high quality, health conscious, well branded Indian restaurant that stands out? Absolutely. Hence, Biryani Pot came about. You know, I will be bold and I'll say there's no one else. And I won't take any names, but there's no one else doing what we do with Biryani Pot for Indian food.
It's pretty creative. We love biryani. My team loves biryani pot, and you have this, fusion biryanis with quinoa and stuff, which is interesting.
Yeah. So, you know, that there was a gap in the market that we felt and we wanted to plug. Tamba, very similarly, there have been a number of copycats that have come after Tamba came to the market, but it's a completely new approach to Indian food. We call it Indian inspired cuisine because it's taking Indian food to another level. You know, we've got some wonderful dishes. We've got a lot of raw dishes like sushi, sashimi. We've got carpaccio. We've taken one of my favorite dishes, for example, which is a khichdi, Indian style khichdi. But we've done that with Italian rice, 5 different types of mushroom. We've got raspberry achar in there. So it's a completely different
Like
concept.
a fusion risotto khichdi.
Yeah. And, you know, that restaurant has won every single award there is to win. And it's today spoken about in the same breadth as the Zumas, the Hakkasan's, the Nobus, you know, the top restaurants in the world, actually. And we're very, very proud of that. And that came about because we felt Indian food is either a greasy spoon or Indian fine dining is the dull white tablecloth with a waiter that, you know, isn't sure if he's coming or going, and the best drink you're going to get is a whiskey and Coke. It's boring.
Yeah.
And I am very proud, and Shalini and I are both very proud of our roots, and we don't see why Indian food shouldn't be able to sit and go toe to toe with the best in the world, not only on taste and flavor, but it should be cool, it should be fun, it should be an experience, it should be sexy. Very rarely do you see that in an Indian restaurant. And for this country, I think before Tamba, there was almost no one that had the guts to take Indian restaurants to that level.
How does the branding of the restaurant business happen? Apart, because all this like food element is great, but how do you do the branding next to it, like coming up with the name and creating a brand out of the name? Because now all of these are brands.
Absolutely.
Biryani Pot is a brand, so is Tamba.
Yes. So it's actually not that easy to find a name that fits.
Yeah.
With Biryani Pot, we took a view that we wanted to create a brand. From day one, we wanted a brand that would have an international appeal. So we wanted it to be simple, easily approachable. And some of the names and some of the kind of references that we took were, Pizza Hut. It is what it says. And everywhere around the world, it's a simple, clean brand, and it's global. And we tried with Biryani Pot to do the same thing. You've got a brand, I believe, that could be dropped anywhere in the world. It's clean, it's simple, you know what it is. It's not, some other names you'd get for Indian restaurants, which are so sort of traditional that they can't necessarily be pronounced or understood by foreigners. So that was our starting point for Biryani Pot. And then you work backwards from there. Right? What's the vision of the brand? And then we fit the name for that. Tamba, again, we wanted an international concept, something that's, global appeal to the brand, but it had to be cool, sexy, easy to pronounce. We've never targeted any of our restaurants to just the Indian community. Tamba was actually named that because the whole look and feel of the restaurant, it is inspired with a lot of copper hues. We've got copper cutlery, copper sort of cladding on the walls. In Hindi, as you know, Tamba means copper. But also Tamba is, you know, when we were imagining it, it was an Indian girl who is very proud of her Indian heritage and her roots. You know, she has all of the values that would come or you associate with Indian culture. You respect her parents, grandparents, you know, all of those sort of family values are there. But also she's not worried to go out in a mini skirt and go out partying and having fun with her friends. So she's the best blend of what we believe, you know, Indian culture has to offer, but embracing the global sort of society that we live in. And that's why Tamba is not just butter chicken and biryani. It's so much more. And that's what then brought it back to the name. What's a name that's got energy but tradition? And we felt Tamba rolls off the tongue really nicely. You know, I think because it's got the amba ending, it's got that like samba. It's an energetic word. It's easy to pronounce anywhere in the world. Little did we realize at the time, though, that the B sound is a little difficult in the Arab world. But
Okay.
it sometimes gets called Tampa.
Who came up with the name? Tamba. Did you come up or Shalini
I
came
think
up?
Shalini came up with that name, actually. I'd love to take credit, but Shalini came up with the name.
That's a good one. That's a good find. Our podcast is called Successful Marketing for Small Businesses. And that's where my next question is heading to is what channels of marketing, because all these are different levels of brand which require different kinds of marketing, like Coriander and Biryani Pot. Like you said, it's like a neighborhood restaurants, whereas Tamba is more of a fine dining. So what channels of marketing have you tried and what's worked and what's not worked? I would love to know what's not worked as well, because it's more important that people don't waste their time and money on things that don't work. And of course, what works would be lovely to
I'm
hear
going to
that
upset
as well.
entire sort of spectrums of industry now. So look, it depends on the location. What we found works in Al Ain doesn't necessarily work in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. So for example, in Al Ain, the most successful marketing platform is road advertising, road hoarding, outdoor advertising. That, without a doubt, is the most successful, and you get the most sort of return on your investment for that. We have tried other things. We've tried radio, and now I'm talking overall for all the restaurants, but radio, door-to-door menu drops, flyer distributions, food trialing in the malls, social media platforms, influencers, digital marketing through channels like Time Out, promotional events where through social media you say participate in a certain contest and then you'll win something. So I don't believe there's really anything that can be done that we have not done. But again, so some of the lessons, radio for us as a small brand, you know, Biryani Pot has the most brand presence in the sense it's 4 units in 3 cities. But we can't approach radio the same way McDonald's could. Yeah. McDonald's will just mention, we are McDonald's and we've got a, you know, X burger. For us, we can't just give that sort of brand recognition message. There's got to be a call to action if you're doing radio. Yeah. So if you're doing a Biryani Pot radio ad, it's got to say, you know, this week only, buy one, get one free, or something, or a promo code that if you use, you get something. That serves 2 purposes. One, it's more engaging for the listener, and it gives us an ability to measure. Yeah. Just saying, you know, Biryani Pot serves great food, blah, 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 you've got no way to measure it. Another channel in more recent times that you can really measure and you do get a return is on the aggregator platforms, so Zomato, Talabat, Deliveroo's. Advertising through those channels does get you, to some extent, a direct result. It's not cheap in some cases, and I won't get started on, you know, the tussle between restaurants and aggregators, but that does work. Influencers used to, but I believe they've lost their shine a little bit today. I don't think viewers have become more discerning.
Yeah.
And so just because Kim Kardashian opens up a milkshake shop doesn't mean that place is going to survive.
Yeah. It's nowadays everybody's become an influencer. So even if people have their own little network and they talk about your brand, suddenly you will see, this is called like word of mouth marketing has become more of Instagram spread marketing nowadays. So I understand that digital probably is giving you best results so far with the aggregators when it comes to restaurant marketing.
As a direct result, I think if you're just marketing to make money and not really
Awareness
there's marketing for brand awareness,
yeah.
there's marketing for return on your investment. Aggregator digital marketing gets you a return and you get money from it. Radio and social media are fantastic for awareness.
What are you doing for Tamba?
A bit of everything. So we do Time Out Digital, What's on Digital, social media, Facebook, influencers less so now, print magazines, which is pushed largely through PR. There's not really in-mall advertising. We don't do street or road advertising for Tamba because it doesn't really fit the brand, and also it's very expensive. Most things.
Was it very difficult moving from owning and managing one brand to now managing multiple brands? Because you have so many different brands to now.
It is. It's not easy going from a meeting where you're discussing dishes that would only be priced at maybe 30, 40, 50 dirhams for a biryani pot to a dish or a concept that is serving, cocktails and champagne and, wagyu. So the mindset shift isn't easy to do, and it's much, much harder having multiple brands. Yeah. And all of ours are created in-house. We don't have any franchises, so we've got no kind of...
Outside support.
Outside support, exactly. That said, you can take a lot of learnings from a fine dining and implement them into quick service and vice versa. So, like, for example, through the service sort of steps of service that you'd have in a fine dining restaurant, where you greet the guests, then show them to the table, offer them the menu, bring them some water. That whole sort of process can also be applied to a quick service restaurant, whereas rather than just taking the order and punching it into the POS and then the person sort of going and sitting down, you can have those little lessons whereby the chef will go out when it's slightly less busy and speak to the guests and ask how they're doing, offer up some freebies while they're waiting, So you can learnings that way. And also on the other side, although we don't do it for Tamba, Biryani Pot is big on the delivery space. We do hundreds of deliveries every day. If we were to take Tamba into that space, the lessons that we've got from how to manage the deliveries and what's successful, what works, what doesn't work on each platform could be translated across to Tamba. And I think fine dining is going to move towards delivery more and more in the coming months and years.
It is actually, already it has started. Like through Deliveroo, we can order most of the fine dining restaurants delivering to our offices and homes. Yeah. So,
well, I think I mean more like the Zumas and the Le Petit Maisons that level will move in that direction, and it's happening in like the US and Europe.
Very soon we should catch up. How do you maintain focus and manage, growth and importance to the brand then? Like, does it happen, one brand requires attention now and all brands require attention at the same time? So how do you because you only have 10 hours a day that you maybe work 24 hours a day, because entrepreneurs work all day, wear multiple hats. So how do you manage focus? Which brand needs when your attention?
So part is structure and part is the squeaky wheel gets the most oil. So what I mean by that is you'll have the monthly management meetings and reviews for each brand. And then during the week, you'll sit on each brand with the marketing teams and with the finance teams and with the ops teams. But then there is an element of, okay, we've seen something has happened with a certain brand and we need to address it. Or on a positive side, there's a national holiday coming up, and for that, Biryani Pot is one that really prepares a nice biryani with the UAE national flag. You wouldn't do that in necessarily a Tamba. Yeah. So you have to be quite disciplined to have a structure, but then you do have to be very dynamic, because that's the nature of the business. And sometimes you have to just go where there's a fire to put it out or where there's an opportunity to avail that.
Does it happen that you have fire all throughout? It happens in our business at least. We work with multiple clients in digital marketing front, and there are times when everybody is down because of the platforms. So we get like phones are always buzzing. I'm like, so
Yeah,
we
look,
have those moments.
You're absolutely right. Look, it does happen, and that's business. And 3-4 years ago, I would have panicked over something like that. But you
learn
get tougher, and you realize things that you can control, cannot control. F&B is a very dynamic and high-pressure space. It's not for the faint-hearted. Okay. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. It's a saying for a reason. It's a tough business. Your guest is always right, and you're only as good as your last biryani, as I always say. A guest that's hungry and not satisfied, you can really see the worst side of humanity with a disappointed, hungry guest.
I can imagine.
But it's also the most wonderful business, because if you can make someone happy when they're hungry, they really do appreciate it. So I love the business. It has huge challenges at every step, but I think it's got far outweighs any of the challenges, all of the beauty of the business, the creativity, the people involved, the branding, the fact that you can be driving along the Sheikh Zayed Road and I can see a Biryani Pot delivery bike. It still makes me excited. I love it.
I can imagine. I would love that. It would make you feel very proud. I'm sure you feel very proud when you see your deliveries going here and there. How did Tamba come about, actually? You guys suddenly decided to go and find, because otherwise all the other restaurants are so like a neighborhood restaurant with wider audiences. Tamba being fine. Why did you decide to open a fine dining and add it to the mix? Like, it's a very big step from this one too.
Sure. Tamba came about because Shalini and I used to we love eating out. And Nobu, Zuma, Hakkasan, they've made Japanese, Chinese food cool. No one, certainly when we opened Tamba, we didn't feel anyone was doing that with Indian food. Yeah. And we believe that Indian food is one of the richest in terms of the heritage, the depth of flavors, the complexity in the world.
And the variety.
And it's certainly hugely diverse in terms of...
Every state has its own specialty.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was never cool, and we wanted to open and establish an Indian restaurant that is cool and that has a global appeal and that, one day can stand as a global brand like Hakkasan, Zuma, Nobu, like those. So that's why we decided to go down that route.
Do you guys have like these special chef friends? Like, how do you come up with the menus and coming up with this fusion dishes? Do you have like a lot of different chefs who work with you and they came up with when you were conceptualizing the restaurant? I'm sure you must have gone through the process of creating these unique experienced dishes, like, even with the sound, I can actually imagine and taste the risotto khichdi, and how do you guys come up with such a menu, such an exotic menu?
So with Tambas, we had a mixture. Well, it took 6 months and 700 food trials to get it right. You start with a concept that you want to move away from your typical Indian food. I then worked with someone that we had in-house at the time, who was our restaurant development manager. The both of us would travel around the world. I traveled personally to the UK, Europe, India, to try different types of cuisine. And I came away from that exercise after months and maybe 40 different restaurants, realizing that no one's doing what I want to do. We then brought on food consultants who were specifically chosen because they didn't have Indian food in their repertoire. So we've taken a lot of influences from Japanese and Spanish and Turkish food, especially the Tamba menus, a lot of tapas feel to it, smaller plates. Yeah. And we do have a lot of Japanese influence. And that's really because both Shani and I love Japanese food. So, you travel around, you try things, you bring on food consultants, then it's trial and error, really, after that. First, you develop a conceptual food philosophy and a concept menu. From there, then you start picking dishes and developing the dishes. And, one of the dishes on our menu, which is a seared salmon, which, it's called the seared salmon citrus explosion, Basically, it's raw salmon that's slightly seared. We wrap it around a piece of tangerine. We have some pomegranate, anardana, which is pomegranate seed on top, mint chutney, some micro herbs, and then it's got like a ponzu tarka. Ponzu sauce is used in Japanese, but we temper it a little bit. That dish took 14 different turns to get it right, just that one dish.
Yeah. Wow, my mouth is watering thinking about the dish now. I already created the vision in my mind. I need to come to Abu Dhabi and try this restaurant.
Please.
But it's interesting on what all goes in creating these exotic menus and that amount of exercise and the amount of effort. So it's all worth it, I guess.
You know, if I take Tamba as an example, that project only came about because everyone involved, myself, Shalini, and our whole team, the chefs, the operations, everyone, some of whom are still with us, some of whom have moved on to other projects, poured their heart and soul into it. Yeah. You know, and it's something that we're very, very proud of and would love to see it grow. And we're looking at diversifying it, taking it to different cities. We know it will do very well. But that's because the foundations are very strong, because so much love was poured into it.
Yeah, that was actually my next question of the vision for the brands, for all of them. One is, what is the vision? And second is, how do you come up with this vision? Because what should we imagine? How big should be the vision? Like sometimes when I think of our vision as our company, and I have to sit and meditate exactly where I want to take the company, how big do we want to grow it? Again, it's very individual, right? So how do you guys visualize vision for across all of these brands? And how do you plan to take it further in the next coming year, especially 2020?
So look, the first thing that matters most to Shalini and I, Shalini's a mechanical engineer, I'm a lawyer. We never started the restaurants just as a profit center. Don't get me wrong, it's a business, it has to make money, otherwise it's not sustainable. But it's born out of passion. So for us, first and foremost, the most important thing is to deliver products and experiences that we are proud of and that the guests enjoys. Whether that's with 50,000 restaurants or with one restaurant, that's number one. So keeping that in mind, we don't just want to grow it to a point where we lose control and we franchise and sell out. You know, that's not what was our driver for starting it. With that in mind, the vision for each brand is slightly different. Coriander, it's a bit of a standalone restaurant. It's been our first, with God's grace, it does very, very well. We may roll that out into other cities in the UAE. The priority at the moment, though, is the growth of Biryani Pot. That we are working very hard at the moment to take that to the UK next year. That is very likely that'll happen. And that will really be our platform to grow internationally. Yeah. My vision for Biryani Pot is that it's a global brand in my lifetime. Yeah. And when I say global brand, I mean, all over the world. I don't know why the number 22,000 restaurants came into my mind once. That's a huge number. Yeah. But, I was inspired that's the number that came in my head. Now, whether
22,000.
Yes.
That's Starbucks. Those are the number of Starbucks.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Now, we will not have 22,000 biryani pots. But the point is a global brand which makes Indian food fun, accessible, cool. Yeah. Tamba, 10, 12 in the key international cities, New York, London, Paris. So that's the vision for the two main brands that we want to grow.
You have lots of work on the table for the next coming years of your life, I guess.
It'll keep me busy once my kids go to university.
Yes, very busy, both of you, which is great, isn't it? I mean, if both of you are in the same business and the same passion, so for people who are listening to our podcast, probably would be entrepreneurs or just starting out with something similar, especially maybe probably looking to branch out their restaurant business from one to multiple locations. What do you feel are the biggest challenges in maintaining a brand with more than one location as a restaurant brand? What is the biggest challenge they're going to face?
One immediate challenge they're going to face is consistency of taste, food, experience. Mm-hmm. That cannot be underestimated, how difficult it is to do that. people will take the approach of dumping lots of money into it and opening a central kitchen, and they've only got 2 or 3 outlets. That doesn't work unless, again, money is not an issue, because a central kitchen is a pure cost center. And that's going to mean you putting a lot of pressure on your outlets to deliver a high amount of revenue and EBITDA and free cash flow to sustain it. So I'd say your one biggest challenge of multi-units of the same brand is consistency of the whole experience. That's not easy.
And how should they do it? What would be the best way to do it to maintain consistency? Am I asking a secret?
No, not at all. Again, assuming you're not going down a central kitchen route, you just have to be very much on top of food trialing, have your recipes and your menus set, your recipe cards.
Systemized and processed.
Absolutely. You've got to make sure. See, cooking is like a science, really. You have to be very clear with your recipes and your cooking instructions so that you minimize the chance of variation in taste. That's key. Make sure that your suppliers are consistent. Like, don't get one supplier that supplies you with tomatoes in Al-Ain and a different one in Dubai. And sometimes you can't get over that, but that will cause a difference in your flavor profile. So really, it's planning is the only way, and then constantly trialing the food and the experience. That's the only way to get it right when you're smaller.
Because food is the only product that you are selling, so it has to be consistent. It's the most important.
Yeah, and that means you will have times when certain chefs will come up with ideas that'll make things better. Mm-hmm. It might be able to taste better, but if you want to do that, you've got to roll it out across all of the units. You cannot have one being in line with your sort of recipe card and your SOP, and the other being better than that. That doesn't make sense either.
Yeah. You have received India Innovator Award by Entrepreneur a couple of years back in 2016. How did you instill a discipline or get drive or ideas to ensure you're constantly innovating? What are some innovations you guys have done across these restaurants? I would love to hear your.
So I think one of our main innovations is really that we're always coming up with new dishes. We try to come up with new approaches to marketing. So the quinoa biryani, which is something that Biryani Pot's very famous for. I don't know of any other restaurant that was serving that at the time we launched it. We've tried many different grains on biryani. We try many new dishes. One of the things we do in Biryani Pot is every month we'll have a new dish on the menu for a limited time. So we've just launched a new prawn biryani, the Malai prawn biryani with coconut cream in it. Okay. But we've also done kebab hot dogs with a brioche bun.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, that's a fun dish. We've not so innovative, but we've done a tandoori chicken pizza. We're always trying new things in terms of the menu options. I think the look and feel of the brand in itself is innovative because it is fresh and modern and vibrant. And generally, Indian restaurants don't take that approach. They like to look and feel and smell and sound like Indian restaurants. Yeah. So I think that in itself is an innovative approach. We try to make our service a higher quality of service experience than you'd get at a normal fast casual restaurant. At one point in Biryani Pots, we used to have a kind of guest relations manager. Her role was just to speak to guests, make sure they're happy, sort of walking around almost like a hostess would play in a fine dining restaurant. So
you must have got such good feedback from that exercise. It would have given some quality information to work on and improve on.
Absolutely, yeah.
I wish every business understands this. And I think customer service is the most underrated or underlooked after element across industries in this region, I genuinely feel. And it's such a key for a successful business to make sure, and I've seen this in the US a lot, by the way, that customer service is taken on or maybe the places that I've been to, like recently I've been to an entrepreneur's summer camp. And the detail the host went to look after us, from the location to the food to the activities to things that were kept for us. You know how they greet you with some stuff to kind of enjoy during your stay at the boot camp, at the summer camp. I mean, I'm sold out to them. I will buy everything they sell to me because the way they presented this one event to me, it was ridiculously expensive, but it was worth every penny like I gave. I think I got back in 10 folds whatever I paid to go for that event. And I'm sold. And I think if businesses understand to kind of give importance to this one important aspect, which is customer service, because that's the key to retain the customers and a success. One of the key important element for a successful business is return business.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
in restaurant business, it's only when I order again and again, I should be hooked on to your food. Like I'm very fond of one restaurant. I don't know if I should name it on the podcast. It's not, it's free. I mean, it's not paid marketing, but I love Jones the Grocer. And I want to share one experience with Jones the Grocer actually. In Dubai, Jones the Grocer have a consistent quality in food, by the way. But when I came to Abu Dhabi for a meeting and because it's a known restaurant, I would maybe go there and have my own, whatever food I like there. It was not exactly the same. It tasted different. And I actually told them something is different. It's not the same as Dubai. And I'm sure never ever I'm going to go back to Jones the Grocer in Abu Dhabi. But in Dubai, still, wherever I go, I get the same quality of the food that I enjoy. So, and that keeps me going back there again. Again, it's consistency in the quality. And the way also they serve in the restaurant. So, customer service, guys, very important for a successful business. Are there some struggles as a restaurant business in UAE? Like, what are the key struggles you go through for running businesses in this market particularly? And you don't have businesses in international markets yet.
No, we don't. Yeah.
But struggles that you go through in this market?
So right now, the F&B sector, I think, is going through a real shift. The impact of aggregators and delivery has really sort of come up in the last 2 to 3 years. And so if you're not nimble and if your product can't lend itself to delivery, it's very, very tough today. And then there is the whole sort of financial impact of a delivery. It's just eating into your bottom line, whether you're doing it yourself and you just have the packaging and the transportation cost, or if you're listing through the aggregators, then you've got their commission on top. If they're doing the last mile logistics, then you've got that commission on top. So I think in the last few years, the biggest challenge has been adapting to the shift in guest sentiment, wanting more delivery, and then these aggregators coming on board, which we have to work with them. It's like a wave. If you're not going to ride the crest, you're just going to get, it's going to drown you. So adapting to that, which has then meant all sorts of changes at the back end in the operations to make sure that you're much leaner and tighter and more efficient as an operation, so that you can minimize costs and still try to maintain your P&L margins, because otherwise it's very tough at the moment. And unfortunately, in our industry, many restaurants have fallen by the wayside because of that, and it's a shame. Sure. And I think the other thing that I just want to add is I think it's a shame for the consumer, because we've ended up in a marketplace where it's very discount driven today.
Yeah.
And look, everyone would want to pay less for something if they can. It's human nature, right? But the downside of that is ultimately in the long run, I think it's going to hurt the industry because, and you see it all the time, restaurants that start giving big discounts ultimately have to make up for that somewhere, and their quality starts to decrease very fast. Yeah. And Shalini and I took the approach very early on that we're just not going to, give these sort of discounts on our brands. We do give some discounts, like new user discounts and certain promotions, of course. But we are very proud of what we've created, and we want to deliver a high quality product. We believe it's great value for money. Now, that doesn't mean it's cheap, but we believe what we deliver, what we give to the guest is great value for money. And to continue doing that, we cannot give 30, 40, 50% discounts. It just doesn't work. But sadly, a lot of restaurants do that today because they have to try to survive.
But then, like you rightly said, it really affects the quality, and you can feel the difference in it. I think it will affect across the quality of packaging, sustainability, I think.
Everything. And ultimately, it will hurt the guest because they will not receive the quality that they want. Yeah. And the whole industry will start to go down, and it'll no longer be that, Dubai and UAE is a great food hub.
Yeah.
So I hope that changes
How will
in
it
time
change?
to come.
What change has to happen for that to change?
Look, if I had that answer, I'd be advising,
I think
governments. But
one of the things would be people accept the pricing. And I mean, I also believe, Akshay, that not all customers are price driven. So a lot of them are also quality driven. Like, I would not probably order from cheap restaurants, to be honest, because I would know. But to me, sometimes, or maybe in food, it does. Quality is connected with price. If I'm paying if I'm buying something for 10 dirhams, what would he have put in my burger or in my whatever food I'm eating? No way would I order that burger or that food. So as much as there's market for 10 dirham as well, and there is market for expensive customers as well. And I think it's on the brand, on where they want to kind of put them, like where they want to line themselves with. They want high quality clients, or they want more orders with less price, or they want less orders with more prices. Again, it's a brand, like it's a company's
absolutely right.
decision. Talking about sustainability, these days it's becoming more and more important to use sustainable resources, and especially while running a restaurant company, because I feel there's a lot of waste in restaurant business. Am I correct? How do you guys apply measures for sustainability across your different restaurants, whether it comes to packaging, the quality of the meat, the storage, the delivery?
So in terms of waste, I think it's very important to make sure that you have what are called production plans in place and smaller batch productions. So there's no point if you're going to sell, if on average you sell 100 butter chickens in a day, you don't make 100 in one go. You'd maybe have 2 or 3 cycles during the day when you're making a batch of 25 or 30 or something like that. That plus just experience based on your sort of order cycles and your customer cycles, you know that you're going to sell a certain amount. What we do is of course we make in batches, but towards the evenings we will, if we're running out and we see it's going well, we won't necessarily make a whole new batch. We'll make much smaller batches so that we can minimize the waste at the end of the day. One thing that a brand that I'm following does, but we don't do it, it would lend itself more to kind of sandwich shops, is at a certain time in the day, maybe an hour or two before closing, they'll give a 50% discount. Just so you can sell out, so the next day it's fresh. So, I think there's no one answer for this. You just have to be conscious of it and minimizing your wastage. It's better to let staff eat it, or to even give it for free, than to throw it in the bin. That doesn't make any sense. So I think as long as you manage your production plans and you know your ordering cycles, you can minimize waste. We cook everything fresh, so it's not possible to cycle it through one day to the next. Cleverly engineered menus, so you minimize your kind of back-end productions, and you use maybe 4 or 5, whatever, base sauces, curries, which then mixed with other things can be turned into, 5 base sauces could be turned into maybe 20 different curries, for example. So things like that are important. And then there's the sustainability in terms of, the operation. So minimizing, if you're not busy, turn down the ACs, keep the lights down, don't just burn coal or gas, or leave the hot boxes on. All of those things add up because it's a volume game. Yeah. Little things like in the tray mat, if you reduce it from 150 GSM down to 90 GSM, for example, 1, it saves money, and 2, it's better for the environment. It's not so easy in this country, but certainly in the West, using sustainable suppliers, sustainable farms, locally grown produce, fair trade, ethical trade. All of these things make a difference.
What about packaging? Do you guys have anything special in the packaging that you apply for sustainability, like using plastic, which is biodegradable or something like that?
We don't. Where we can, we look at minimizing, the impact on the planet of packaging. So with one of our brands, the Dark Kitchen, we use biodegradable sort of paper-based. We can't necessarily do that with Biryani Pot because the first unit we opened, we weren't allowed to have crockery. So we had to go with disposable. Yeah. And then, that has to sort of filter through the brand. You cannot change that. But, the flip side of plastic is you're not using water to wash.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's uh, more and more nowadays it's becoming important to be sustainable, to kind of save the planet. As much as water is important, so is
I agree.
keeping the earth
And I
away
think
from
one way
plastic.
that brands can do it, if you know, again, it's access to those things. You know, there's a company that I'm exploring at the moment that does, it's making the disposables out of not only biodegradable, but edible, product.
That's interesting.
But if you can't access those things, or it doesn't work from your sort of P&L perspective, you can look at ways to put things back in. Like, companies can take a certain portion of funds and invest that towards planting trees. And, so I think as long as there's an awareness and a culture, there are many ways to put back into, the sustainability.
Customer service, we spoke about customer service before, but is there any particular special measures you guys apply for giving a good customer service? Like you said, you shared you had someone, relationship manager, who would sit and call customers and check if the quality was good and they enjoyed the food. Are you still practicing something like that, or anything new you've started?
So we have our own operating procedures on how to interact with customers, and people, all of the staff in our restaurants are trained on that, and we continually try to improve on those things. But then beyond that, it's little things like, ultimately, we want to make sure that every guest is happy. It's not easy, because sometimes you have a guest with maybe an unreasonable request, or a request that we just cannot satisfy. But in those situations, I think you can never prepare a SOP for that. For that, we just empower our managers that our ultimate goal is guest satisfaction. And so if they've got that mindset, then they can approach the challenge slightly differently and try to find a solution. One real example of this recently, we had a gentleman that came with his elderly parents to the restaurant. His reservation, not out of fault of ours as such, but someone else was on that table and they just wouldn't, they weren't finished, so we couldn't remove them. The guest was very upset because his mother was in a wheelchair and so on, and hugely upset. It wasn't anyone's fault, but ultimately you had an upset guest. So in that particular case, we took some special measures. The guest's mother was going in for a surgery in hospital. So we sent food and flowers and tried to make her feel special. It's kind of going over and beyond. But ultimately, we hope that the guest will be happy, because food is not just about what goes in here. There's a whole reaction that happens in the mind. And, you really are selling an experience, and you're selling happiness. So you have to.
Even when the food is delivered, it's selling an experience.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. From the way the packaging is, when we open the box and when we see it, it's all experience.
Yep.
And it's the experience with which we connect to the brands. I can actually recall incidents when we've noticed the way the packaging has been done and the food and the way it's presented. Like, even when we order at office and it stays, and then you want to order back. So again, keeping the customer back is part of the experience. Your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant, Biryani Pot.
Apart from your own?
Fine dining or quick service?
Both. I want to know both, actually. Yeah, I'm curious.
Fine dining, Zuma, for me. Quick service, that's a tough one. I don't normally order out that often. I eat my own restaurants. But, God, quick service, what do I like? Sushi art.
Okay.
Both Japanese.
You like Japanese food. Any experience that stayed with you, you experienced at any other location, internationally traveling, that you then adapted to your restaurant? Any such story or experience you can share?
I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I learned from all of the restaurants that I was trialing when I was coming up with Tamba was that there's no one doing what we wanted to do. So there are lots of great restaurants all over the world doing interesting things. But for me, there wasn't one that really stood out. Like I said, I'm a fan of Zuma. I find it consistent and high quality, but I love Japanese food. But I can see things in Zuma that I wouldn't do in my restaurant. There's many things that I think are great, but I wouldn't take everything wholesale. I like sushi art, but I wouldn't necessarily invest in that sort of product for myself. I wouldn't mind owning Disham. They seem to do very well, and I think it's, again, they've taken Indian food, made it cool. I think that's fun. So I think there's no one example, but there are many, many different spots around the world that I would look to, yeah.
What is one piece of advice would you like to give someone who's looking to open a restaurant, like a startup, thinking of opening a restaurant, maybe considering an idea of opening a restaurant?
Do very, very detailed planning and preparation in terms of all of your costs, kind of sustainability in terms of if your revenues go down 10, 15, 20%, build that in, make sure you're properly funded so that you can deal with that first, not 3 months, not 6 months, 12 months when it will be lean. Mm-hmm. So I'd say preparation is number one, and that's all the way from costing, market study, comp analysis, negotiating aggressively with suppliers, malls, everyone.
Yeah.
And then be ready that if you're forecasting to do whatever,
business.
100,000, you're going to do 20.
Yeah.
Build your whole model on
5
that
times.
basis.
Yeah. What if somebody doesn't have a background of the restaurant, never done or never opened a restaurant? Is there a particular kind of consultancy, or how do you get hold of the information?
Do a law degree.
But
Look, there's a lot of consultants in the market.
For the
A
restaurant.
lot of people that are offering advice and services for the restaurant industry, some of whom have never run a restaurant in their lives or never owned one.
giving consulting.
So look, if you want to open it, the tools are out there. We kind of jumped in, or Shalini jumped in without really with having no experience. But I think engineers are very good. They're very process driven. So she understood it. And there's all these sayings on Instagram these days. If you, I don't know, they come up with jump first and the net will appear. And if you're offered an opportunity and you don't know, learn on the job. I think all of that's very nice, romantic chat. But you have to really plan and prep and eat, live, breathe, sleep, whatever you're focusing on, and reading and researching and meeting people from the same industry. That's the only way.
Otherwise, it's too much of a risk. What if there's no net? And
Yeah.
What are you not very good at?
Yeah, many things. Or in the restaurant business or generally?
You can tell us both. We'll start with the restaurant.
Saying no to people that I love. I can't do it. So
That's a good one, right? Saying no to people that you love. That's not a good one, actually.
like, if someone I love dearly will ask me for something, I cannot say no. So I'm not good at that.
That's good, actually. It's good. You shouldn't say no to people you love.
What am I not good at in the restaurants?
Yeah.
I can't cook.
Did you want to be ever a chef?
No, I didn't. I love food, but I don't think I ever really had a desire to be a chef. I admire them. I think that chefs have one of the hardest jobs in the world, and it's almost thankless. Today we have more celebrity chefs and so on, but it is a very, very tough job, being on your feet, high pressure, guests being hungry and upset, and everyone's grandmother used to make this particular dish better than you can, and it's not easy. So I've got a huge amount of admiration and respect for chefs.
It's in my bucket list to go for a chef training. I don't know why, but not to serve in a restaurant or something, but I love food, and I love my own food. I don't know why. Even, mostly I cook my own meals.
You love eating your own food?
I love eating my own food, yeah.
There you go.
And I go to restaurants and I feel, shit, I can make this better than that. And I'm one of those. And I'll try to replicate that at home. So most of the times I fail. The restaurants kind of like food, And I create my own fusion dishes. So I want to actually go for a chef's training and understand the basics and the mechanics of how these dishes come about. And maybe I don't know some of the technical aspects to create better.
You can open
dishes.
a Namita's Bar and Grill.
Bar and grill, dark
kitchen.
No. I don't want to be. I think I'm happy serving for myself and my friends and family. That gives me enough pleasure. I remember when we spoke last time on the phone about the podcast, we spoke about the books. What one book would you love to give to others?
To do with the restaurant business or generally?
Whatever, one book that you would gift to someone if you have to take a gift for someone.
That's a very good question.
Your favorite book, maybe. Usually you give your favorite books, don't you?
Yeah, I think one book that I feel really had an impact on my life was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I think that's a great book.
Yeah.
And I think if there was just one book that jumps to mind that I would give to people, I think that's got a great message. And I'd highly recommend that.
It's interesting. This book has come about it was there in the previous podcast with Saad as well. It's one of his favorite books. And I'm hearing Power of Now. Actually, it's all about being present. That's what Eckhart Tolle
absolutely
talks
right.
about. And with today's life is only about future and what others are doing. And you get carried away and lost because of Instagram and social media. I want to share a little story. I went to this summer camp, right, in America. After that, I went to Vermont for a cycling trip. I've not shared this story on camera ever. On the cycling trip, we were 13. I'm into cycling. I'm a cyclist, and I travel for, it's like fitness with fun. So we were 13 in the group. You won't believe, 3 women. I was one of them. And 5 couples, out of which 4 couples were from the age group of 65 to 70. 65 to 70 age group cycling in Vermont. And we were doing 140 kilometer rides on a back-to-back 5 days. And the first day I was not prepared for hills because I come from a flat road, which is Dubai. And little dumb of me, I didn't practice much enough. These guys were so fit at the age of 70 and 65. All of them, both the couples, husband and wife, were in that age group. And I learned so much from these couples, the wisdom they shared with me while having conversations over lunch or dinner or breakfast. And one of the things that they shared was I asked them a question: what advice would you give to a 40-year-old you? Because you cannot go back 20 years. But if you had to give yourself an advice at that age, what would you give? And one of the things they said was, I would tell a 40-year-old me not to waste time on Instagram. And look at other... not to waste time on social media, because this is what they're seeing now, right? If they were at this time 40, do not waste, because Instagram is all fake, or your social media is all fake. You're wasting your present moments on looking at others and being jealous at what others are doing and being envious. And another very good piece of advice they gave me was always forgive the past, but don't forget the past. You take your lessons from the past and always try to live by the moment, and don't even ponder on the future, because if you live the current moment well, the next moment is going to be a good one, and and that's how you make your destiny a good destiny. So, and it was such an eye-opening trip. Like it was I really evolved as a person because of the stories they shared with me over of their life, and how they plan their life, because they are at that premium age where they cannot go back. They plan in summers, so they plan 10 summers. And we really we don't really give importance to what we have, the time that we have now, because once we reach there 20 years down the line, it'll be too late to look back. And that's where, again, the power of now, the more present we are, the more we enjoy the moment that is happening, the more better would be our future. I don't know if it makes sense, but
absolutely, I agree. And that's, you've distilled the message from The Power of Now there anyway.
It was really one of the best trips of my life, this trip to Vermont for cycling. I also know that you listen to podcasts. Any particular podcast you would recommend?
Not really. I don't as much as I'd like to, but Tim Ferriss, I like some of his. One as well. He's got some good podcasts. I like Ryan Holiday.
I love his. I recently bought his book, The Stillness Speaks. Have you read his book?
I've not. I've done Ego is the Enemy and The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah.
I find both of their podcasts interesting.
Yeah.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name.
Difficult. Yeah.
He's kind of interesting, although his message can get a bit tiring for me, which is just you hammer it out and everything else doesn't matter and you keep working. That doesn't really sit with my mindset, which is that you've got to have a balanced existence. There's no point just working and waking up 10 years later with lots of money, but less experiences. Yeah. So,
any closing thoughts? You would like to give any message to the audience? Anything about your restaurants?
I suppose as we're targeting sort of young entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, it's not easy to make a jump, especially if you've got a job, and to leave that safety net and go into business. But I think as long as you take a calculated risk, I'd suggest to anyone that has that aspiration to do it, and live that moment and live out your dream, like it was for me to live out my dream. It'll be hard, there'll be difficult times, there'll be tears, blood, sweat, but at the end of it, I think you'll come away a lot more fulfilled and enriched as a human being for taking that step. I think I heard a quote from, I think it was Will Smith who said it. He said that beyond fear is bliss. So it's scary, but take the jump and...
Net will appear.
Or not, as you said.
On that note, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much, Akshay, for making it, for accepting my invite and making it here. I truly enjoyed our conversation. I hope, thank you for sharing all the stories and so much detail and giving such amazing advices to our audience who's startups or small business owners. I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the conversation. Please ask us any questions from myself or from Akshay from the comments below, from whatever platforms you're watching or listening to this podcast. Share the podcast with your friends and family and help spread the message. And don't forget to subscribe. Hope to see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.